Renting a place when you're moving somewhere new, whether it's Florida or anywhere else for that matter, can be difficult if you're moving without a job or no credit, or if you're a student, for example. And I've seen a lot of complaints addressing this issue in the comments over the past few months, so I figured I'd make an entire video about it. In fact, one of my viewers actually sent me an email asking me to make this video. This person asked to remain anonymous, and they will. I'm not going to reveal their name or anything like that, but I am going to read you what they wrote me. I've watched your videos on YouTube. You really need to make a video on how difficult it is to get an apartment in Miami without having a job. Let me explain. I'm a full-time student over the age of 30 with $50K in savings and a 778 credit score. The majority of landlords are requesting 3 times the rent in income and declined my application even after I offered 6 months up front. What the hell? Luckily, I just found a landlord willing to work with me. Now, just in case you don't know who I am and this is the first time watching one of my videos, my name is Michael Bordenaro and I am a real estate agent here in Miami Beach, Florida, and I have been for about 12 years. And I've been through this situation many times with hundreds of clients, really, because I have done hundreds of rentals here. And so I put together a list of some tips that will help you in becoming more successful in renting a place without a job or if your credit's not that good. At first glance, you would think, well, why wouldn't anyone rent to this person, right? It doesn't really make sense. And honestly, me as a real estate agent, I was surprised to hear that they had such a hard time renting a place, mainly because their credit was so good, and having a savings account with $50,000 in it is usually more than enough for a landlord to say yes. And by the way, the budget they were looking in was less than $1,600 a month, so they could easily pay the entire year's rent up front if they needed to. So I don't understand why any landlord would give them a hard time. One thing I want to clear up right away is this 3 times the rent in income situation is a lot more common when you're renting an apartment versus when you're renting a condo. And I'm not going to get into all the differences in this video. If you want to hear the differences between a condo and an apartment, make sure you're subscribed because I will cover exactly that in my next video. But if you are looking for a rental without a job, here are some pointers I have for you. It is going to be tougher than for somebody who has a job, but it's not impossible, okay? You have to keep looking, and obviously this person did find a place eventually. And you need to be flexible, especially when you're renting, guys, no matter if you have a job or not, really, because you're not going to be living in this place forever. And I've dealt with my fair share of very picky clients when it comes to rentals, and especially when you're renting a place like $1,500 or less, something like that. You shouldn't be extremely picky because it's not going to be your forever home, and it's better to get a place that is okay and fits all of your needs and also the landlord's willing to work with you than to just set your expectations way too high and then to be disappointed when you can't actually find a place. The next thing, a lot of times a landlord will be willing to accept a large upfront payment in rent. And the fact that a lot of landlords didn't want to for this person makes me a little suspicious because I don't know exactly how they were going about negotiating this with them. But that's a very enticing offer, and me as a landlord myself, if I had somebody offer me 6 months rent up front, I would probably jump at the opportunity unless that person had like a criminal background or their credit was very bad or something else about the situation didn't sit right. But a lot of times that's a very powerful negotiating technique, and I recommend you do try that if you have the money. This next tip goes especially for students, but really can work for anyone if your financial situation or credit situation is not ideal, and that is you can get a cosigner. You can have a parent co-sign for you, a friend. It doesn't really matter. Anybody who's over the age of 18 is legally allowed to sign a contract. Therefore, they can be a legitimate co-signer. But most of the time, a co-signer is a parent or a close friend or relative that has a very stable financial situation going on for them. And the landlord will be willing to put them on the lease along with you just in case you default on the rent, and that gives them the peace of mind knowing that they have someone else to collect the rent from just in case you stop paying. The next thing is, if you're going to move to Florida or anywhere really without a job, at least maybe try to get a job or a job letter or guarantee before you come. I know this isn't always possible, and it's not something that I did when I moved here, but a lot of people that I worked with over the years come here with a job letter or recommendation from one of their past employers, and this will give a landlord a lot more confidence in renting to you, because either one, that means you're going to be getting a job soon, or it means you're going to have a very good chance at getting a job because of the fact that you've been highly recommended by your past employer. And this leads me directly into my next point. You want to be working with a real estate agent. It doesn't cost you anything as the renter, at least here in Florida, to work with a real estate agent, and a lot of other states are the same. You just don't need to pay the real estate agent. The landlord will end up paying their commission most of the time. And so it's going to be working to your benefit to have a real estate agent versus trying to do all of this yourself for a couple of different reasons. One, you're going to be able to explain your situation to that real estate agent, and they're going to know which places already in that area are going to work for you and which ones are not, because chances are they've already done a bunch of rentals in the area and know it much better than you do. Also, there's a good chance that you're not the first one who's been in this situation, and you're not their first client to come along with this set of criteria, so it just makes it that much easier for them to basically line up a place for you. However, with that being said, then you also need to listen to your real estate agent, and first of all, obviously you want to make sure they're trustworthy, but if you do trust them and they're telling you these are the places you need to be looking at and these are the places you need to avoid, then you need to listen and go along with that, because it's going to make getting a place that much easier. Now, if you insist on going it alone and you really don't want to have a real estate agent, that's fine, but I highly recommend avoid looking at apartment complexes for the most part. You're going to be better off looking at places that are either for rent by owner, where you can work with the landlord individually and explain your situation, and it's better off if you're looking at condos that are individually owned by landlords. They don't have to be listed for rent by owner. They can be listed on Zillow or the MLS or places like that, but you want to make sure it's a condo and not an apartment. And remember, I am going to be explaining the differences between the two in my next video. A couple other alternatives you can try is you can try renting a place that has a shorter term lease. There are places here in Miami Beach, for example, that are available for shorter term leases, like 6 months or 3 months or somewhere in between. And so since you're not really established and you don't have a job here, it might be better off for you to try to get something like that. You're probably going to be paying more in rent than you would pay for that same apartment if you were leasing it for a year, but it will give the landlord peace of mind knowing they're not going to be stuck with you in the event that you stop paying the rent. And it's also a good opportunity for you to build up some rapport in the place that you're moving, because either you're going to build up rapport with this landlord and maybe you're going to end up staying in that apartment for a longer term at a reduced rate, or what might happen is if you decide you want to leave that apartment and it was just a stepping stone, now you have a recommendation from a local landlord that can vouch for you. So that's going to be very important. And if you try all of this and everything else fails, the last alternative you could do is live in a cheap hotel that charges by the week or by the month, or even an Airbnb. But I recommend against doing this, and I kind of would say this is the last resort for all the reasons I mentioned before, because one, you're not going to build up a rental history like that, and two, it's going to be one of the most expensive options, so it's going to be the least ideal, it's going to suck the most money out of your pocket, and it's not going to be a permanent living situation. And I feel like being in a situation like this just puts more pressure on you than you already have, and when you're moving somewhere new, the last thing you need is more pressure. So I would say that's a last resort. But at the same time, if you know for sure you're going to be moving somewhere and this is the best you can do, then it's better than nothing, and it's better than just staying where you're at and not moving at all. Now, if you want more details on the renting process, feel free to book a one-on-one call with me. I have a link for this down in the description below. But in the meantime, keep on hanging out with me and watch my other videos about renting versus buying right over here, and I'll see you guys over there.